All right, now that we have the basics out of the way, I want to talk about 8 things you can do to improve your microbiome beyond the oligosaccharides. The first secret, obviously, is eating a wide range of oligosaccharides. But let's get on to secret number 2, and that's fiber. Humans are estimated to have been here for about 200,000 years in our current form. 190,000 of those years we were hunter-gatherers. The last 10,000 we were farmers, and the last 100 as modern man. Hunter-gatherers eat about 100 grams of fiber a day. Early farmers ate about 35 grams, and modern man about 15 grams of fiber. Now, eating like a hunter-gatherer would mean chewing tubers all day long, and it's not realistic. But the modern diet is fiber deficient. I aim at eating about 35 grams of fiber a day, like we did for the 10,000 years after the dawn of agriculture. Considering that 35 grams of fiber worked for the last 500 generations of humans, I'd say that's good proof. So how do you get 35 grams of fiber? Well, a cup of shredded carrots only has 3 grams of fiber. So what do you eat? Well, the answer is beans. Beans were the first crops ever cultivated, and I think the best. A cup of beans can give you 17 grams of fiber, and the rest you can do with grains, fruits, and vegetables. Now, if beans give you gas, and that's not uncommon, try soaking the beans overnight. If that's not enough, soak them and slow cook them. And if that's still causing you issues, you can do what I do, which is get adzuki beans, soak and rinse them for 24 hours, and then slow cook them, and then you won't get much gas at all. Getting past 35 grams of fiber is probably going to require taking a fiber supplement, but there's some things you should consider if you're going to go that way. Insoluble fiber can irritate a damaged gut, and soluble fiber can create methane gas, which besides flatulence can also paralyze the intestines and slow down transit time. So the second secret is beans. After that comes transit time, and we talked about how to measure that with chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is not something you want to be taking on a regular basis because you're not actually getting chlorophyll, you're getting sodium copper chlorophyllin, and because that's what's easier to produce and it doesn't go bad as quickly, has a longer shelf life. But all that copper is not what most people need. So, you can do the chlorophyll, liquid chlorophyll, which is actually chlorophyllin, once to get your transit time, once again to see you've improved it, but don't take it regularly. Now, depending on the kind of food you eat, food will spend 1 to 4 hours in the stomach, around 6 hours in the small intestine, and then about 8 hours in the large intestine. If your transit time is less than 16 hours, that's not going to give your food enough time in the intestines to be digested and absorbed well. But far more likely is that your transit time is longer than optimal. It's not unusual for people to have transit times of 2, 3, 4, even 5 days. And they'll tell you that they're not constipated because they go to the bathroom every day. But if what comes out is what went in days ago and there's that lag time, that's constipation. And if you have a pooch kind of below the belly button, that's a sign of a transit time issue as well. So when transit times last more than 24 hours, that allows pathogenic microbiology to start happening. Now, you can temporarily speed up your transit time with things like Cascara Sagrada, but it's addictive and you need more and more to get the same results. And then if you stop, you find you can't go to the bathroom at all. So how do you speed up transit time? Well, consider the Hadza of Tanzania, Africa. They're one of the most well-documented primitive hunter-gatherers we know of. They eat about 100 grams of fiber a day, but they also do 135 minutes of vigorous exercise a day. That comes to 1.35 minutes of exercise per every gram of fiber. So if you're going to eat a standard diet of 15 grams of fiber, and at minimum a 20-minute hike or a 30-minute walk once a day. And if you're going to eat 35 grams, which is what the early farmers would do, that's about an hour walk a day. Intestinal transit and peristalsis is a very muscular activity, and this is one of the reasons why exercise speeds up transit time. If you have weak muscles in your body, you're going to have weak muscles in your intestines, and they won't move the food at an appropriate speed. So the third secret is taking walks. And then you've heard don't eat at night, right? Well, now I'll explain why. There's a special kind of peristalsis called the giant migrating contraction or migrating motor complex. And this is how the gut cleans itself of all the debris that it can't absorb. Now, the small intestines will do this, but only if there's no food in them. If you eat food at 8 o'clock at night, then the food's in your stomach for 4 hours, and then in the small intestines at 12 o'clock at night. And then for 6 hours, it's at your small intestines. And then if you wake up at 6 in the morning, you never had empty an empty gut, so you might never have gotten the migratory contractions and your gut might never clean itself. So try to eat by 5 or 6. And the fourth secret is try to have about 14 hours, at least 12, between dinner and breakfast, with no snacks after dinner. What about digestion? Yes, it's important. It's important that only fiber and oligosaccharides get into the large intestine. Remember, when we eat beyond our capacity to digest or absorb, these things spill over into the large intestine and cause the problems that we discussed in the previous video. So this is also why trans time is so important. This way, any spillover that you get has the minimum amount of time to spend in the gut causing issues. So this way, if you go to a barbecue and eat a lot of meat, or you're at a birthday party and have a lot of cake and you've got a lot of protein or carbs undigested in your large intestine, they're not spending days there putrefying, they're gone in a few hours. So the fifth secret is don't overeat, or don't do it regularly, right? But what happens if you don't digest even small amounts of food well? So if you eat modestly and still don't digest well, then you're going to get stuff showing up in the large intestine that shouldn't be there. And there's 2 hacks for this. One, make sure your bile is flowing. If it's not, that's going to limit fat digestion, and bad bile, bad gallbladder health can also cause sludge and stones to form in the gallbladder ducts and shunt bile into the pancreas and burn the pancreas and wreck digestion. And you can take a look at our Glytamins product. It's the one in the orange box. And the other thing is consider taking digestive enzymes with your meals. Now, if your stool, breath, or body smells bad, you've probably got protein spilling over into the colon. And if you have gas, it's probably carbohydrates. And if you have gas that smells bad, you've probably got both carbohydrate and protein spillover. And you're going to need to work on transit time and digestion. So the sixth secret is digestive enzymes. Now let's talk about 2 prebiotics that are not found in the Panaceum formula. And it's because they're easy to make and are required in amounts that would be impractical to put in a supplement. And these are retrograde starches and beta-glucans. Retrograde starches, also known as resistant starches, are made by when you cook a starchy food like a grain, a bean, a potato, and you put them in the fridge for 4 hours. And it causes the starch to take a crystalline form that basically turns it into time-released. It lowers the glycemic index, it turns it into an oligosaccharide, and it slows down the absorption. And beta-glucan is a prebiotic found in whole oats. So if you want a resistant or retrograde starch and beta-glucan, it's really easy. Go get some organic whole oats, cook them, and then put them in the fridge for 4 hours, and then eat them. And that'll give you those 2. So the 7th secret is chilled oatmeal. And then the 8th secret is a good attitude. The microbiome affects our moods, but our moods affect our microbiome as well. Our microbiome produces, consumes, and regulates the neurochemicals that create our emotions. But our emotions also stimulate the growth of various bacteria. The emotions of fear, anger, stress, which are adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol, respectively, stimulate the growth of pathological bacteria. And they also increase the virulence of otherwise harmless bacteria. On the other hand, oxytocin, which is a neurotransmitter released with feelings of love and compassion, that supports the growth of good bacteria, and good bacteria make oxytocin. So if you cultivate a bad attitude, it's a vicious cycle. It creates a bacteria that makes bad attitudes more likely to happen. And if you cultivate a good attitude, then you're cultivating good bacteria that supports you in having a good attitude. The neurotransmitters that run all of our emotions, we didn't invent them. They're not human inventions. This is the original language of the microbiome. The serotonin, the dopamine, the neurotransmitters, these were all bacterial signaling compounds that we then learned how to use. Some people say that the microbiome is your second brain. It's not your second brain, it's your first brain. It was here first. Our brain came after the microbiome and uses the language, the neurotransmitters the microbiome created. So now you understand why having a healthy microbiome is imperative. It's required to have a healthy mood because it's the original creator of all the neurochemicals that go into our moods for good or not. So it's a vicious or virtuous cycle depending on your mood and your microbiome, and it's up to you which ones you want to cultivate. And in the 3rd video, we're going to talk about SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. Okay.